আপনি জয়েন করেছেন? আচ্ছা দেখছি স্যার। হ্যাঁ না না বলছি সোমবাবু জয়েন করেছেন? না সোমবাবু মনে জয়েন করেননি। আচ্ছা হ্যাঁ জয়েন করেছি। আচ্ছা শোনো, প্রিন্সিপাল স্যার বাইরে হঠাৎ ফোন করলেন। হ্যাঁ আমি একবার চৈতালি দিকে ফোন করছি, তুমি 5 মিনিট বাদে শুরু করো, 7:05 শুরু করবে। হ্যাঁ 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 আমি চৈতালির সাথে একবার কথা বলে নিই। এই যে ওয়েলকাম করে দেয়, নাহলে তুমি স্টার্ট করে ওনাকে ইয়ে করে দেবে, ইউজ করে। হ্যাঁ বেশি কথা না বলাই ভালো। হ্যাঁ আমি এখন চৈতালির সাথে কথা বলে নিই। হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ ঠিক আছে ঠিক আছে।
Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Hello, am I audible?
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ শোনা যাচ্ছে।
আচ্ছা, start করছি তাহলে। Good evening and welcome to one and all. I welcome you to this third session. This is our third lecture on the value-added course on Indian knowledge systems. This is a course specially designed over 30 hours by the IQAC of Government General Degree College, Singur. And today we have with us our distinguished speaker, Dr. Soham from Scottish Church College, Kolkata. But before that, before introducing our speaker for the day, I would like to call on Dr. Soitali Choudhury, coordinator, our IQAC coordinator, to please say a few words. Over to you, Soitali.
শোনা যাচ্ছে এবার?
হ্যাঁ, এবার শোনা যাচ্ছে একদম।
গুড ইভিনিং এভরিবডি। আজকে আমাদের ভ্যালু অ্যাডেড কোর্সের থার্ড লেকচার। আজকে আমাদের বিশিষ্ট অতিথি ডক্টর সোহম পাইন। আমি তাকে আমার আন্তরিক ধন্যবাদ জানাই আইকিউএসি পক্ষ থেকে। He will be delivering his lecture on religious diversity in Hinduism, an overview of the three main sects, Vaishnavism, Shaivism, and Shaktism. Heartily welcome to you, sir. And আমি আজকে আর যারা উপস্থিত আছেন এখানকার আমাদের যারা ফ্যাকাল্টি মেম্বার্স, শ্রদ্ধেয় শিক্ষক শিক্ষিকারা এবং যাদের জন্য এই অনুষ্ঠান, সেই ছাত্রছাত্রী সবাইকে আমি স্বাগত জানাচ্ছি। এবং বিশেষভাবে আমি I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to our today's speaker, Dr. Soham Pain, for his presence. A very warm welcome. এবং আমি অবশ্যই আজকে আশা করব আজকে তার যা বিষয় সে বিষয়ে আমরা তার কাছ থেকে শুনে ঋদ্ধ হব এবং আমরা অনেক নতুন নতুন বিষয় জানতে পারবো। Thank you once again. Parama, over to you.
ম্যাডাম আপনি আনমিউট করুন, আপনি আনমিউট করেননি নিজেকে। আনমিউট।
Thanks. I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Soham Pain. He is Assistant Professor of English at Scottish Church College, Kolkata. He has formerly worked as Assistant Professor of English at Chopra Kamalapal Sriti Mahavidyalaya, West Bengal, and at Swami Dhananjay Das Kathia Baba Mahavidyalaya, Bankura, West Bengal. Pine completed BA with honours in English from Presidency College with first class in 2007, and then completed his MA in English from the University of Calcutta in 2009 with specializations in C.S. Eliot, New Literatures, and Post-Colonial Studies. After that, he joined the prestigious Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi, India, as a research scholar and completed his PhD on Indian writings in English from Center for English Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, in 2018. He was a Fulbright Nehru Doctoral Fellow in 2014 to 15 at the University of Texas, Austin. Pine's current research interests include myth criticism, psychoanalytic studies, and the Mahabharata. He has presented papers in reputed national and international platforms and published papers in journals and anthologies. Pine is also an active translator. His book, Malgudi Ethics, Ideal of Karma in Selected Novels of R.K. Narayan, has been published recently in 2024. He has also translated Jacinta Karketa's book of poems, Jaro Ki Zameen. We are eagerly waiting for your lecture, Dr. Pine. Your lecture topic is religious diversity in Hinduism, an overview of the three main sects, Vaishnavism, Shaivism, and Shaktism. Over to you, Dr. Pine.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Poroma Boshu and the Department of English, Government General Degree College, Singur, for granting me this opportunity. I am indeed grateful, and also many thanks to Dr. Chaudhary as well. I would like to share a PowerPoint. So can I get just 2 minutes to fix that?
I think you can start sharing, and when it's visible, we'll let you know.
Thank you. Is it visible now?
I can see a blank screen.
What?
I'm still not able to see the visual. Maybe it will come on in a minute.
Wait. Yeah, I think this time I got the right thing.
Yes, it's there.
Yeah, is it showing? Okay. Thank you so much. And I would like to begin straight away. I would like to begin my presentation by explaining what I mean by religious diversity. There can be lots of definitions of these two words, religious diversity, but I would like to begin with a very simple definition: faith in many gods and coexistence of many sects. For my presentation, I would like to narrow down the topic to the question of tolerance of rival gods and sects, and my focus would be on the three major sects of Hinduism: Vaishnavism, Shaivism, and Shaktism. I would like to mention that I have divided my lecture into 4 parts. In the first part, I would like to focus on why it was possible for the Hindus to allow the simultaneous worship of many gods, or in other words, what is the philosophical basis that facilitated and promoted such Catholicity. This part focuses mostly on Upanishadic philosophy. Then in the second part, I would like to show how monotheism evolved out of polytheism and what methodology was adopted to negotiate between monotheism and polytheism. This part would be mostly devoted to early texts such as the Mahabharata and some of the processes that continued in later ages down to the modern era. In the third part, my job would be to question the success of these processes and point out how, consciously or unconsciously, the sectarian Vaishnavas and Shaivas were never able to fully rise above ideas of supremacy and dominance. Finally, in the fourth part, my aim would be to focus on the Shakti cult and comment on its perspective of religious diversity. A separate treatment of the Shakti cult is necessary for two reasons. First of all, it developed at a time when Shaivism and Vaishnavism were already very popular. It developed at a very later age. And secondly, Shaktism, despite having all the sectarian elements that Vaishnavism and Shaivism have, turns out to be the most large-hearted, the most all-embracing. So I begin my presentation with this outline for my introduction. So this is a passage from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. In the beginning, this world was Atman alone, in the form of a person. Looking around, he saw nothing else than himself. He said first, I am. Thence arose the name, I. Therefore, even today, when one is addressed, he says first just, it is I, and then speaks whatever name he has. So, this is a passage which promotes the belief that the mundane self and the transcendental self are one and the same. The finite self is just a reflection, or better to say, an extension of the infinite self. They are not essentially different. Now, this is the second slide. The passage continues, verily he had no delight. One alone has no delight. He desired a second. He was indeed as large as a woman and a man closely embraced. He caused that self to fall into two pieces. Therefrom arose a husband and a wife. He copulated with her. Therefrom human beings were produced. So the supreme self, the Atman or the Brahman, is also beyond gender. So he split himself into two different selves, which were originally one, and then the humans sprung from the union between the female and the male self that arose from that division. She became a cow, he became a bull. With her he did indeed copulate. Then cattle were born. She became a mare, he a stallion. Thus indeed he created all, whatever pairs there are, even down to the ants. He knew I indeed am this creation, for I emitted it all from myself. This last line is very important. I indeed am this creation. So, according to the Indian Upanishadic philosophy, of course, this philosophy is retained in all the sects of Hinduism, barring one or two. So, generally, the created world is just an extension of the transcendental self, and all creatures down to the ants, they are all reflections of that one entity. Now, in a later passage in this Upanishad, the text also mentions how even the gross elements arose from this one self, but I am leaving that out because that is not necessary or relevant to my presentation. So, this relationship between the mundane and the transcendent is also reflected in the idea of yajna or sacrifice. The same text in a different passage says, this is the beginning of the Upanishad, a very famous passage. Verily the dawn is the head of the sacrificial horse, the sun his eye, the wind his breath, Agni Vaishwanara his open mouth, the ear is the body of the sacrificial horse, the sky his back. So it goes on saying that. I am not reading out the entire passage. So the sacrificial animal is not an offering to a god. The animal is the god. So at this point, I would like to mention the research by the famous American mythologist Joseph Campbell. So he had written 4 volumes: Primitive Mythology, Oriental Mythology, Occidental Mythology, and Creative Mythology. The entire series is called The Mask of God. And in these 2 volumes, Oriental Mythology and Occidental Mythology, he makes a very pertinent observation. He draws a comparison between the split in Adam's body that is mentioned in the Bible and the split in the self, the Atman, that happens before creation in the Upanishads. So this is what he writes. In the Indian version, it is the God himself that divides and becomes not man alone, but all creation, so that everything is a manifestation of that single inhabiting divine substance. There is no other. Whereas in the Bible, God and man from the beginning are distinct. Man is made in the image of God, yet his being, his self, is not that of God, nor is it one with the universe. So the 2 different philosophical standpoints, they actually dictated the evolution of these 2 religious traditions in the later era. So when so this is another quotation. In the Indian view, what is divine here is divine there also. Nor has anyone to wait or even to hope for a day of the Lord. For what has been lost is in each his very self or Atman, here and now, requiring only to be sought. It is not that the divine is everywhere, it is that the divine is everything. So, when every creature is a reflection of the same divinity, monotheism does not appear incompatible with polytheism. Any of the many gods, and at times even humans and animals, can be elevated to the position of the supreme God. So this flexibility is very important to understand. And if all gods embody the same divine spirit in many forms, then they are only supposed to act harmoniously, and they are not expected to be in opposition to one another. So this is a famous prayer from the Rig Veda, where all the gods are being worshipped at the same time. They are being requested to shower blessings on the worshipper together. So this highlighted line, assemble, speak together, let your minds be all of one accord. This is the famous Sangyana Suktam, which we often find recited here and there. So now we come to this process of narrowing down the number of gods, and instead of excluding or demonizing one or other god, you can still conceive of a supreme god by merging or assimilating all these gods into one. So these are the Vedic gods. Normally we say that Hindus worship 33 crore gods, but in the Vedas only 33 gods are mentioned, and they are collectively called the Vishwe Devas, and they are also enumerated: 8 Vasus, 12 Adityas, 11 Rudras, 2 Ashwins, and sometimes 2 Ashwins are substituted with Indra and Prajapati. This is not really rigid, because Indra is often included in the 12 Adityas also. So again, we hark back to the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So in a passage where the sage Yagyabalka is asked by Shakalya to enumerate the number of gods, Yagyabalka first says that they are 3,303. and then he comes down to 33, and finally he comes down to 1. And Shankaracharya in the 7th century writes this commentary on that discussion. The gods are one as well as many. The infinite number of gods are included in the limited number. These again are included in the successive smaller numbers, 33 and so on, up to the one vital force, prana. Prana here means breath. Often life force itself is synonymously used for breath, the exhaling and the wind that we exhale or inhale. The one vital force which expands into all those numbers up to the infinite. Thus, the vital force alone is one and infinite, as well as possessed of the intermediate numbers. So, here we find a decisive step towards merging all the gods or assimilating all the gods and conceiving of a supreme reality which includes all those lesser manifestations of the divine. And the first I should say, evident step, the first certain step towards monotheism is to be found in a late Upanishad, the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. And the picture that we see here above the picture of the text is that of Shiva, Rudra Shiva. This is a sculpture from the Kushana period. So here,
Sorry to interrupt, Soham. Can we see the slide again? I mean,
the
I can
earlier
only see
one,
the first slide.
the
picture is
earlier
not
one or
showing.
this one? Is it visible now?
Not yet.
Now, no, it is not. Okay, so give me 2 minutes. I shall just
Sure.
share it again.
Yes, now we can see the picture. Thank you.
Now you can see the picture, but
Yes.
so
Thank you.
shall I just return to the slideshow mode?
I guess whatever you're comfortable with.
But can you see the picture now? Even now?
We can see the picture now.
Okay. So there must have been some glitch for a moment.
I guess.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So instead of Vishnu, who later became one of the major divinities in Hinduism, this text promotes or elevates Shiva to the position of the supreme deity, but at the same time it does not reject Shiva as a deity, as one among the many gods. Without challenging the concept of the supreme Brahman, conceives of a personal god or Ishvara, and calls this personal deity Hara, Rudra, Shiva, and also frequently uses the term Deva to denote the supreme deity. So I move on to the next slide. So the other ancient text, which in a very similar manner elevates one deity among the many to the position of the supreme god, is the Bhagavad Gita. And Shvetashvatara Upanishad and the Bhagavad Gita are roughly considered contemporaneous, because we don't find any Upanishad which dates back to such a hoary past and elevates Vishnu to a similar position. There is one Upanishad named the Mahanarayana Upanishad, but it's considered to be a spurious one. So Bhagavad Gita is the earliest theistic text which, instead of Shiva, focuses on Vishnu. And I have quoted 4 passages from the Gita. The first one God manifest in all beings. Whatever thing has power, prosperity, or force, know thou that this is sprung from a part of my glory. This is towards the end of the 10th chapter, one of the most famous chapters in the Gita, where Krishna says that I am manifested in everything that is good, that is prosperous, and that is glorious. Other gods are lesser gods, but not false gods, as they too are empowered by Krishna alone. But it is better to worship the highest God directly. Even those who are devoted to other lords of heaven and sacrifice to them, possessed of faith, do sacrifice to me alone, but not as law ordains. For of all sacrifices am I the enjoyer and the Lord. Then,
Excuse me, Dr. Pine, the slide has not changed for us. If you could please do it again.
what is happening? Has it changed now?
Yes, now it has.
So I think the problem is with the slideshow mode.
Could be,
I
if
think the
that is the problem, if you could please take charge of this manually, then maybe it will be better because we can't see the slide changes otherwise.
so okay. So I shall stick to this mode, which is not the slideshow mode. I shall manually just change from one slide to move on from one slide to another.
Yes, that will be perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so apart from jnana and karma, which are also accepted as valid paths for salvation, bhakti is also extolled in the Gita. This is one of the earliest texts where the significance of bhakti is emphasized. Abandoning every duty, come to me alone for refuge. I will release thee from all sins, sorrow not. This is from the 18th chapter, and this is called the crowning shloka of the Gita. The famous shloka in Sanskrit reads, Sarva dharman parityajyan mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shucha. So the path of bhakti is also opened to all who do not have the right to the Vedic rituals. For even women, Vaishyas and Shudras too, if they resort to me, go on the highest way. So we find two important developments in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad and the Gita. First of all, now the focus shifts to the worship or reverence of a personal deity who is both a deity and the Supreme Self in embodied form. Secondly, we find a shift towards, if I won't say demonizing, because this is not demonizing, towards preference for one deity and undermining the significance of other deities. And finally, the path of bhakti, where you can actually form a connection, a direct connection between yourself and the personal deity. So earlier the mode of or the means of salvation was meditation, because if the self or the Atman is in everybody, then one is supposed to look inwards. But here, because of the rise of the bhakti tradition, it became almost close to the Christian concept of prayer and devotion to the deity. Now, with this, I come to the end of the first part of my presentation. So, following the Gita, which is, of course, a part of the Mahabharata, we find a significant change coming in the popular version of the Hindu religion. On the one hand, there is monotheism that is on the rise, but at the same time, polytheism is not on the decline. So how do these texts negotiate between these two extremes? So normally the first process or method of reconciliation is to emphasize reciprocity and complementarity between the major deities. Now, in this picture, we can see the three major deities of Hinduism. Towards our left, we can see Brahma, then Shiva, then Vishnu. So, normally in the Puranas, we find that despite the fact that one deity is called supreme, there is an underlying belief that all these three deities are somehow bound with each other, and they reflect three separate manifestations of the same reality. And I would recommend this book, Hindu Dev Devi. This is a Bengali book by Hanshanarayan Bhattacharya. This is the second part of the book. And here the author quotes from all these early texts: Garuda Purana, Brahmanda Purana, Kurma Purana, Skanda Upanishad, Matsya Purana, Padma Purana, and even the medieval and very late Tantra Sara and also Vidyapati's lyrics, and shows how people never gave up the idea that the three three supreme deities are reflections of the same supreme Godhead. Now we go back to the Mahabharata and see how this reciprocity and complementarity is achieved by these early texts, Mahabharata, Harivansha, and the Vishnu Purana. The Mahabharata is certainly not a sectarian text, though, of course, the main character is Krishna, and Krishna is elevated to the position of the supreme deity in the Gita and also in many other parts of the Mahabharata. But on the whole, the Mahabharata is very specific about the fact that Shiva and Vishnu, they work in union. They are each other's associates, and Shiva works in order to fulfill Vishnu's activities, and similarly Krishna, or Vishnu in the form of Krishna, is only trying to fulfill Shiva's blessings or Shiva's prophecies or Shiva's desires. So here we find the hero of the Mahabharata, Arjuna, who is favored by both Shiva and Krishna. And I have quoted a passage from the Drona Parvan. So in the Drona Parvan, Arjuna asks Vyasa, Dhananjaya, the son of Kunti, asked Vyasa, I continually beheld before me a person of blazing hue, broken in reality by him. People regarded the foe to have been broken by me. So Arjuna acknowledges that this person, this blazing person, he is the one to slaughter the enemies, and people think that Arjuna is the one to destroy them. Vyasa said, Thou hast, O Arjuna, seen Shankara, that first cause, the protector of the universe. So the same Arjuna to whom Krishna says that finish these enemies because this is my work that you are doing, the same Arjuna is also told by Vyasa that Shiva is the one who is fulfilling that aim. So they are complementary figures in the Mahabharata. And the same scheme in the cosmic pattern is repeated in the Sauptika Parvan. So on the left we can see an image, a picture of the Pandava camp where Ashwatthama is about to launch his attack, and just above the camp we can see Lord Shiva. He is identifiable by the snake around his neck, and Ashwatthama is coming towards him, aiming his arrow at him, but Ashwatthama would be defeated, and finally Shiva would be pleased with Ashwatthama, and he would empower him to kill the Panchalas. And let us see what the text says. Mahadeva appeared in person and smilingly said to Ashwatthama, with truth, purity, sincerity, resignation, ascetic austerities, vows, forgiveness, devotion, patience, thought and word, I have been duly adored by Krishna of pure deeds. For this there is none dearer to me than Krishna. By protecting the Panchalas, I have honored him. They have, however, been afflicted by time. The period of their lives hath run out. So, now that the Panchalas have been afflicted by time, Krishna is not trying to protect them. But so long as Krishna had wanted to protect them, Shiva was supporting him. And finally now, Shiva is playing his role as the destroyer through Ashwatthama. So Ashwatthama at the end of the day does not emerge as evil. So again, there is a complementarity between Shiva and Vishnu in the text. And I would recommend strongly 3 books for those who are interested to know more on this topic. Epic Mythology by E.W. Hopkins, Arjuna in the Mahabharata by Ruth Katz, and Reading the Fifth Veda by Hilde Beitel. So in all these books, these symbolic associations of Shiva and Vishnu in the Mahabharata are fully explained and interpreted, and I would suggest that the listeners, if they're interested after my presentation, they read these books. Now we come to another text which is considered to be an appendix to the Mahabharata, and this is called the Hari Vangsha. And in this text, which is certainly of Vaishnava orientation, we find that Shiva is again considered to be the Supreme Lord, and in the description of Daksha's sacrifice, at the end of the episode, Shiva and Vishnu are reconciled. I have put a picture of the Daksheshwara Mahadeva temple in Haridwar, where people believe the sacrifice took place, and where Sati had committed suicide. So here in this text, Daksha, who happens to be a devotee of Vishnu, is protected by Vishnu initially. So there is a fight between Vishnu and Rudra Shiva. Having fought for some time in order to defend Daksha, the blue-bodied Lord Vishnu suddenly leapt and clasped Lord Rudra by the neck. Rudra, the Lord without beginning and end, forgive me. This is what he is saying. Then from the skies was heard the auspicious voice of the Siddhas, hail the eternal Lord Shiva. So even in this text, which is visibly of Vaishnava orientation, the identity between Rudra, Shiva and Vishnu is not dismissed. Now we come to the first overtly sectarian Vaishnava text, the Vishnu Purana. This is certainly the earliest of the extant Puranas, and all serious students of Puranas take this Purana as the ideal one, because this is chronologically the earliest, and also this has much of the characteristics of the earlier texts like the Mahabharata and the Hari Vangsha. So this text is closer to the epics than to the Puranas. So it is a bridge text between the two canons. Of course, that is true of Hari Vangsha also, but the Vishnu Purana, despite being a Vaishnava Purana, it certainly accepts that Brahma and Vishnu, and also Shiva and Vishnu, are one and the same. So the first picture that I show here is that of Krishna's fight with Banasura. So Bana was a devotee of Shiva, and Shiva, Parvati, Kartikeya, they were all protecting his uh, city, that is Shonitapura. So when Krishna launched his attack, Bana was initially saved by, he was protected by Shiva, but finally Shiva was defeated and he retired, and Bana's arms were cut, they were chopped off by Krishna, and Shiva comes and pleads for Bana's life. So Krishna says that I cannot reject this request because you and I are after all the same. And in the second picture, I have, this is a picture of Anantashayi Vishnu from a temple in West Bengal only. So the text also emphatically says that Vishnu lying on the cosmic waters is none other than Brahma. So Brahma is the one who creates after he has finished his sleep, his cosmic sleep as Vishnu at the end of the cycle. So the identity is once again acknowledged. Now we come to the question of reconciliation between the major gods and the minor gods. We were so far focused only on how the texts attest to an identity between the three major gods, but now we come to the lesser gods. So here we find the method of declaring one deity as the son or devotee or gana of a more powerful deity. So in this slide, we can see four deities. We know all these four deities: Ganesha, Garuda, Hanuman, and Nandi. So these were mostly, and one can of course immediately understand that these four deities are all zoomorphic, and they were probably totem deities from the beginning. Except for Garuda, who is known to the Vedic literature, these three deities are not known. And Hanuman is certainly of South Indian origin. His name Hanuman, most people believe that is that name is a Sanskritized version of Arnamanti, which means the monkey. And Nandi was a bull totem. Ganesha is also related to ancient elephant worship. So these deities were assimilated into the pantheon by declaring them as attendants or sons or devotees of the more powerful deities. One more process of negotiation is to claim a local or a folk deity as a laukika, that is a non-Vedic or non-Puranic manifestation of a Vedic or a Puranic deity. So on the left, we can see Lord Panchanan or Panchanando. So this deity is very much popular in the 24 Parganas. So he is a local version of Shiva. So originally, there are two possibilities. Either originally he was a local deity who was later on identified with Shiva, or he was a localized version of the Puranic Shiva. The same applies to the next deity in the picture, that is Khandoba. He is widely popular in Maharashtra and considered to be a local manifestation of Shiva. Then we have Mahoba. I'm sorry, the first one is Mahoba and the later one is Khandoba. So one is identified with Shiva, the other is identified with Vishnu. Both are popular in Maharashtra. Finally, we have our very own Shitala. So I don't think many people are familiar with the text Shitala Mongol because it's not as popular as the Manosha Mongol, the Chondi Mongol, or the Dharma Mongol. But in Shitala Mongol, there is a tradition that Ravana, who was an ardent worshipper of goddess Durga, refused to worship Shitala, and Shitala cursed the city of Lanka, and everybody succumbed to uh, diseases, especially to smallpox and fever. But even then, Ravana remained adamant, and goddess Durga appeared before Ravana and said that don't disrespect Shitala. Shitala is my manifestation only. If you disrespect Shitala, that indirectly hurts me. So here is one more process by which a Puranic deity and a local or folk or a tribal deity are identified. Not quite different from the former procedure is another procedure wherein the avatars are multiplied. So in the earliest texts of Vaishnava orientation, we find no mention of Parashurama as an avatar. We don't find any mention of Balarama as an avatar. Here the second picture is that of Balarama. So Balarama in the earliest texts, that is in the Mahabharata and in the Harivansha, is considered to be an avatar of Ananta, the cosmic serpent, not of Vishnu himself. But as Krishna rises in popularity and Krishna becomes equal to Vishnu in later mythology, Balarama his name is substituted by that of his elder brother Balarama, and Balarama is now the eighth avatar, not Krishna. Krishna is not an avatar. Krishna is tu Bhagavan Swayam, so he is God himself. And in the first picture we found Aha. In the Vedic literature, Aha is not associated with Vishnu. Varaha is avatar of Brahma. In Purana, as Brahma's popularity declines, Varaha is now assimilated in the list of avatars of Vishnu. Buddha, he is accommodated into Hinduism, into mainstream Hindu pantheon as an avatar of Vishnu. He didn't even belong to the Vedic tradition, but he is accepted. The fourth picture is that of Nakulisha. Nakulisha, like Buddha, is a historical personality. He was a Shaiva Acharya who lived sometime in the 2nd century AD. And here he is identified with Shiva, and that's why he has 4 arms. In his front right arm, he is carrying a staff, Laguda. That's why Nakulisha is also called Laguda Panisha. So this is a picture from Odisha, from Bhubaneswar. So he is in the Puranas considered to be an avatar of Shiva. So avatarhood is not exclusive to Vishnu. Now we move on to the next slide. This is the final step in reconciling or assimilating the folk deities or tribal deities. Accommodating female deities into the mainstream by making them daughters, sisters, or wives of the male deities. So the first picture is that of Durga, or Yoga Nidra to be more specific. We can see Vasudeva and Devaki. They are bowing before the goddess, and Kamsa is there, who is trying to kill the baby, who is stunned at the fact that the baby is rising up into the sky. And in the next picture, we find Parvati. Now, see, this is a picture of Durga. But Durga here, riding on a lion, has Ganesha on her lap. and she doesn't have 10 arms or 18 arms, she has just 2 arms. So these two pictures prove how this independent goddess Durga Mahishasura Mardini was accommodated into the mainstream Hindu pantheon, first by the Vaishnavas who wanted to project her as Vishnu's sister, and then by the Shaivas who wanted to identify her with Shiva's wife Uma Parvati. Then the third picture is that of Monosha. We all know who Monosha is, and we all know uh, that she is a local or a folk deity. And the Monosha Mongol Kabbo, it says that she was born from Shiva's mind, Shiva Manushkonna. Now, if somebody is mind born, then her name should be Manoshi, not Monosha. So Monosha is a folk etymology, and whoever tried to explain her name that way did not know Sanskrit enough. That's why he or she came up with that imaginary etymology. So this very name, the explanation of this very name proves that she did not originally belong to the Vedic or Puranic pantheon. So these are the 5 major methods by which lesser deities or other deities were gradually assimilated into the mainstream pantheon, and how one could at the same time remain devoted to one particular deity without disrespecting other deities. But things started changing with the rise of sectarianism. So far, we have been looking at texts that were mostly Catholic. So the Upanishads, the Mahabharata, the Harivansha, and the Vishnu Purana, despite having Vaishnava orientation, is still Catholic in its outlook. But now we look at the later Puranic and sectarian texts. So the first picture is that of the Bhagavata Purana. The next picture is that of the Shiva Purana. It's clearly visible that it's Shiva Purana. Then we have the Pashupata Sutram, the earliest Shaiva Tantric text that has come down to us. Then the Shiva Sutras, which is the fountainhead of the Kashmir Shaivism cult. And finally, Agama Pramanya, the earliest Vaishnava text to be written by an Acharya who rejected the authority of the Vedas and promoted the authority of the Puranas and the Agamas. So that text is written by Yamunacharya, Agama Pramanya. So with the rise of these sects and sectarian texts, things began to change. Now we see a marked shift in the attitudes of Vaishnavism and Shaivism towards the deities worshipped by others. And the stories which were once considered to be promoting or which were once considered to be promoting unity or identity between Shiva and Vishnu were now reinterpreted as promoting the fact that one is subservient to the other. So let us look at this slide. So whether this is assimilation or this is veiled bigotry is an open question. Because in doctrinal Vaishnavism, a Vaishnava is always taught that Krishna or Vishnu is the highest, and all other deities, right from Shiva to the least of the gods, are subservient to him, are his parikaras or dasas. So here in the first picture, we find the depiction of a passage from the Bhagavata. Brahma is paying his obeisance to the child Krishna. Krishna has outwitted him, and Brahma has appeared before him and is begging forgiveness. So this is one of the most famous stories from the Bhagavata, which proves uh, the limited power of Brahma and Vishnu's power over him. Then the second picture is that of Gopeshwara Shiva from Vrindavana. So Gopeshwara Mahadeva is the form of Shiva which is thought to have manifested itself when Krishna was playing his Rasa Leela gopis. So Shiva had gone there and Shiva had dressed himself up as one of the gopis, and he is still worshipped in Vrindavana in that form. So here, instead of donning him in male attire, devotees don him in female attire. By attributing this status of one of the gopis of Krishna, the Vaishnavas have evidently undermined Shiva's status. So he remains as one of the devotees, one of the slaves, dasas of Krishna. And the third picture is that of the temple of Jagannatha. I would like to remind my audience about a former slide where I mentioned Buddha as one of the avatars of Vishnu. Normally, I find people pointing this out as an example of acceptance of or tolerance of our rival tradition. But that is not the case. Anybody who has read the Puranas will immediately identify a subtle cunning in the method by which Buddha is assimilated into the pantheon. It is said that the gods had gone to Vishnu and asked him to delude the asuras so that the gods could vanquish them. So Vishnu took the form of Buddha, a false prophet, and preached a false doctrine among the asuras. When the asuras accepted that doctrine and converted to that new religion and rejected the true Vedic religion, they fell from virtue and could easily be vanquished by the gods. So this was a politically motivated move where you accept Buddha as an avatar of Vishnu, but at the same time reject his teachings as harmful and ask people to stay away from Buddhism. That is not respect. That is cunning. And the picture of the temple of Jagannatha I have deliberately put there because the temple was originally a Buddhist shrine. So Jagannatha was actually Buddha. The three figures whom we worship today as Jagannatha, Subhadra and Balaramu were actually Buddha, Dharma in the form of Pragya Paramita, that's why female, and Sangha, the three Ratnas. So this is not assimilation, but this is I think appropriation. Now we come to a comment by a very famous Vaishnava teacher, Acharya of our times, Srila Prabhupada or A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. So we all know about the Hare Krishna movement. We all know what ISKCON professes. And there is hardly any town in India and the US where there is not at least one temple run by ISKCON. So this is what Swami Bhaktivedanta has to say about Shiva. Since Lord Shiva is the greatest soul among the living entities within this material world, his name Shiva is very auspicious for persons who identify the body with the soul. If such persons take shelter of Lord Shiva, gradually they will understand that they are not the material body, but our spirit soul. Lord Shiva is always in meditation on the lotus feet of Vasudeva, Sri Krishna. Lord Shiva is worshipped because he is the greatest devotee of Lord Vishnu. One should not, however, make the mistake of considering Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu to be on the same level. So this is a very clear bit of lesson. This sounds almost like a warning to dedicated or committed Vaishnavas that you can worship Shiva, but no independent worship of Shiva is allowed if you are a true Vaishnava. Now we may focus on how the Shaivas conceived of Vishnu in their own scriptures. So we turn to Shaivism. I have quoted a line from the scriptures, Shiva parataro na anyat, Shiva parataro na anyat, which means there is no other who is greater than or transcendent or beyond Shiva. So in this slide, I have put three pictures. One is the Sharabhesha manifestation of Shiva, one is the Chakradhana Murti, and another is the picture of Ekapada. So let's start with the first one. So this is a very common form of Shiva worshipped in South India, but this form is not known so widely in Eastern and Northern India. This is called Sharabha. This peculiar creature has the head of a lion, the torso of a human, has 4 arms, 8 legs, and the lower part of the body is like that of a lion. So the Shaiva scriptures narrate how Narasingha, even after killing Hiranyakashipu, could not be pacified. The Vaishnava scriptures say that Prahlada, his devotee, prayed to him to calm down, and that was enough. So Narasingha immediately was pacified, and he returned to his benign form of Vishnu and caressed Prahlada, his devotee. But the Shaiva scriptures give a different ending to this story. They say that the world was now threatened because of Narasingha's wrath. So Shiva had to take an even more fierce form, an even fiercer form, and he grabbed the Narasingha and tore his body into 2 parts. And then only Vishnu came to his senses. Here we can see a blue-bodied Narasingha, somewhat stupefied and helplessly staring at Shiva. He is caught between the 2 front legs of Sharabha, and he has his 2 front arms above his head in the form of Kritanjali. So he is begging for forgiveness. So by creating an avatara of Shiva who is immensely more powerful than the most powerful avatara of Vishnu, the Shaivas are not paying respect to Vishnu. They are only trying to emphasize the fact that Shiva is the supreme reality and Vishnu is no match for him. In the next picture, we find Shiva handing over the Sudarshana Chakra to Vishnu. So this is the Chakradhana Murti. Shiva is seated. Vishnu is stooping and he is taking the chakra with alacrity. So he is paying his respect to Shiva. So this is the story of the origin of the chakra according to the Shaiva Puranas. There was a monster named Jalandhara, and Shiva drew a circle on the ground with his right toe, and that circle immediately took the form of a mighty weapon, and he killed Jalandhara with that weapon. That is what we call the Sudarshana Chakra. And later on, he granted Sudarshana Chakra to Vishnu. So the Sudarshana, which is Vishnu's mighty weapon, was actually formed, it actually originated from Shiva's feet. That is the idea. And finally, we come to the image of Ekapada. Ekapada means one-footed. Shiva in the middle, Vishnu and Brahma emerging with joint palms, paying their respect to the one supreme God. So this picture I took from a huge Shiva temple in Chennai, it's called, the suburb is called Tiruvottiur. I have forgotten the name of the temple. So this is one of the unusual images of Shiva. So often we come across pictures where Shiva, Vishnu and Brahma are seated side by side, or they are standing side by side. But who is the supreme? That question is decided by the person in the middle. And here there is no confusion, because they are not just flanking him on both his sides, but they are also emerging from his body. So I had so much to say about Shaivism and Vaishnavism. Now I would like to turn to Shaktism. I think I still have time. Do I?
Yes, of course. Yes, yes.
Thank you. Kindly alert me when time is running out. So, in order to understand the stand of the Shaktas, we need to look at the evolution of the Shakti cult. I have already shown one picture where I have mentioned how this independent, powerful goddess Durga Mahishasura Mardini was first assimilated into the Vaishnava pantheon as Vishnu's sister, and then assimilated into the Shaiva pantheon as Shiva's wife, Parvati. So those who want to know more on this topic are recommended these books, are not these books, one book, that is Heroic Shaktism by Bihani Sarkar, and one essay, Addition, Erasure and Adaptation, Interventions in the Rock-Cut Monuments of Mamallapuram by Vidya Dehejia and Richard Davis. So in these books and essays, the authors have pointed out how in the earliest phase, Durga is found only almost exclusively in a Vaishnava context. So we do not have any evidence of Durga worshipped independently, because all those texts are lost, the pre-Mahabharata texts. By the time of the Mahabharata, she is already identified with Krishna or Vishnu's sister. So in the first picture, which is from a cave in Mamallapuram, we find Durga standing with 4 hands, and she is holding a chakra in her upper right hand and a shankha in her left hand. So she is of Vaishnava orientation. And there are also other depictions of Durga Mahishasura Mardini in Mamallapuram. But then we find many of these shrines were later given a Shaiva orientation by carting out Vishnu images and substituting them by images of Shiva with Parvati. So on the right we find an image which was installed later, 1 or 2 centuries later. So this image is also accompanied with an inscription which says Dhik Tesham. Dhik Tesham means who unto those. So Dhik Tesham, for those who do not worship Shiva. So that inscription evidently is biased against the Vaishnavas, and it was installed by somebody or some patron or king who wanted to give this goddess or her depiction a Shaiva tinge, a Shaiva hue. It took a few more centuries for Durga to once again become an independent deity in her own right. And that is found in what we now call the Chondi, the Sri Sri Chondi. The original title is the Devi Mahatmya or the Durga Saptashati. We call it Chandi because it starts with the Dhyana mantra Ya Chandi Madhukaitavadi Daityadalani. So this text, it creates an all-powerful goddess by adopting three stories from the earlier Puranas. The first story, which is depicted in the picture below, the picture at the left below, that is the story of the slaying of Madhu and Kaitava by Vishnu. So the original legend in the Mahabharata categorically says that Vishnu was the one to kill these two demons. But in the Devi Mahatmya, this story, which was originally owned by Vishnu, is given a Shakta orientation. Here it is said that Vishnu is unable to defeat these powerful asuras even after fighting them for millennia. So finally the goddess, who is the embodiment of Vishnu's Yoga Nidra or Yoga Maya, power of delusion, she is requested by Vishnu to delude these two asuras. These two asuras are deluded by her Maya and they ask Vishnu to ask for a boon. And Vishnu immediately asks them to allow himself to kill them. So here, without the aid of the goddess, Vishnu was not able to kill those demons. So the goddess is elevated to a level above that of Vishnu. The second picture, which is above these, it is the depiction of the well-known story of Durga's emergence from the collective energies of the gods. Now, this is a very problematic story. If one starts reading this story in isolation, he or she is bound to be confused and he or she is bound to think that this goddess is a new creation and is subservient to the gods. But that is not so. The text has a continuity. This goddess is none other than the supreme reality, which is manifest in the energies that are already present in all the gods. And that's why after Mahishasura is killed, the goddess is not rediffused into the bodies of the individual gods, but the gods are the one to praise her and seek her blessings, and she blesses them and vanishes, and then she again reappears in the third section, which is here depicted in the third picture, when Shumbha and Nishumbha, two other demons, start harassing the gods. So in this section, Parvati is going for a bath and she sees the gods praying, and when she asks the gods to whom they are praying, before the gods could answer her question, the Devi emerges from Parvati's body and answers her question. So Parvati becomes a lesser manifestation of the supreme goddess, and Parvati does not know that this supreme goddess lies dormant in her own self. And then all the gods, they come in, or not all the gods, 9 of them, they come in female forms to assist the goddess in her battle against the Asuras. And finally, they all merge into the one goddess at the end of the story when Shumbha accuses the goddess of having taken support from other goddesses. And then the goddess says, Ekaivaham jagatyatra dvitiyaka mamapara. I alone exist in this world. Who else is there who is different from me? So this is the Purnadvaita philosophy, very much reminiscent of the Upanishads or early Vaishnavism or Shaivism, where the same entity is present in all individuals, with the exception that that entity is not being conceived of as a god, but as a goddess. So this all-powerful goddess is created in a discursive process by the Devi Mahatmya, and it is because of this Catholicity that Shaktism emerges as the most all-embracing of all the sects. All goddesses are manifestations of the same supreme goddess, and there appears to be less of hierarchy between them, and sometimes there's no hierarchy. So here there are pictures of 4 goddesses which I have collected from different shrines. On the left, there is the picture of goddess Rajaballavi from Shobha Bajar. So her complexion is white. Like Kali, she holds a scimitar, but her tongue is not flung out, and she doesn't have a dangling tongue, and she doesn't have the garland of skulls either. So which goddess is this? There is no mention of Raja Vallabhi in the scriptures. But when I went to the temple and asked the priest about her puja, the priest said that she is worshipped with the same mantra, Sarva Mangala Mangalye. So that is the Chandi mantra. Then towards the right, there is a picture of Vimala Kali. She is called Kali, but unlike Kali, she has a chakra in her left arm and a shankha also in her lower left arm. She is dark like Kali, but her tongue is not protruding. And again, she is also worshipped with the same mantra. This is from Baruipur. Then in the middle, on the top, there is a picture of Ghagor Buri. Ghagor Buri is a famous shrine in Asansol, and 3 pieces of stone are worshipped here in the form of the goddess, and they are thought to manifest the 3, to be symbolic of the 3 manifestations of the goddess, that is Mahalakshmi, Mahasaraswati, and Mahakali. Again, the same mantra is used. And in the middle, just beneath the picture from Ghagor Buri, there is a picture from Malda. This is, they call it Madhai Chondi. Again, Chondi, it almost seems to be a generic name. So there are 3 masks. One mask is not completely visible, but 2 masks are visible. And again, the same mantra is used. So this kind of Catholicity has led the famous critic Gayatri Spivak to comment that there is no great goddess. When activated, each goddess is the great goddess. So in that very essay, Spivak points out that if I am a worshipper of Vishnu, then I am exclusively a worshipper of Vishnu, and Shiva is a lesser deity for me. Similarly, if I am a Shaiva, then Vishnu is a lesser deity for me. But for Devi, all goddesses are same to me, because they are the manifestations of the same goddess. And it must also be said that Shaktism has been the most successful in assimilating tribal and folk goddesses into the mainstream. So what used to be a folk shrine back in the 1950s is now an ornate Kali temple. So the original piece of rock, which was worshipped by the folk people, that has been substituted by a beautiful image of a goddess, now worshipped in an anthropomorphic form. So that's why this cult is the most Catholic. And Rajeshwari Sundar Rajan, in an essay, the name of the essay is the Hindu goddess a feminist, has also argued that the very word that is used for the goddess, Devi, is so fluid. So who is your Aradhya? Which deity do you worship? Devi. I'm not saying Durga or Lakshmi or Parvati. I'm simply saying Devi. And this generic word Devi has made it possible for the Shaktas to accommodate more and more female deities into their pantheon.
Yeah,
And
good.
Also, in the early texts like the Mahabharata and in the early inscriptions that we find scattered across the country, we find evidence that often the identity of the deity was not really important. So a Vata Yakshini, if now I am asked to worship a Yakshini, I would say no, she is not a goddess. But back in those days, a Vata Yakshini, a tree spirit, she was also assimilated into the goddess tradition, and now she becomes a tree goddess. So in the early lists of Matrika goddesses in the Mahabharata, we find the curious mention of one deity called Putana. And the moment we read that name, we are reminded of the ogress who was hired by Kangsho to kill the baby Krishna. So Shaktism has the widest spectrum when it comes to reverence for all other deities, and mostly female deities. But even then, Shaktism also has its own limitations. This is a quotation from David Kinsley's famous book, Hindu Goddesses. The particular goddess who is elevated to supremacy, be she Parvati, Durga, or Lakshmi, will be given all the attributes of ultimate reality, but at the same time will keep most of a distinctive mythology and appearance. The author will usually betray a preference for a particular goddess tradition, and she will tend to appear more like one goddess than another. So when I visit these folk shrines of different goddesses, they are called Buri Than. They are mostly identified with Chundi or Kali, but I haven't seen them getting identified with Lakshmi or Saraswati. So some preference for one particular goddess and her tradition still remains. Now we come to the question of the Shakta attitude towards the male divinities. So far we have known that Shaktism promotes the idea of the Supreme Self as female and not male. But what about the male principle which the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad had recognized? So I move on to the next slide. So normally in today's Shaktism, there are three views. So Shiva, the male principle, is also recognized in almost all Shakta schools. The first view is that Shiva and Shakti are equals. Neither represents absolute reality individually, but they are inseparable, so they are never separated. The second view is that Shiva represents the supreme reality and Shakti is subservient to Shiva. The third one is Shakti is the ultimate truth of whom Shiva is only the adhara or the container. So in order to symbolize the first viewpoint, I have put a picture of Ardhanarishwara, where the two are fused into one. For the second, I have chosen a picture of Uma Maheshwara, where Shiva is seated regally and Parvati is uh, sitting in a very shy and feminine way towards his left. And finally, we all know who this is. This is Ma Bhavatarini of Dakshineshwar, and she is standing erect on Shiva, who is a corpse in this case, Shava. So Shavarupa Mahadeva. So in this case, Shakti is the ultimate truth and Shiva is only the container. So normally it is the third viewpoint which undermines the male deities, or let's mention only one male deity, Shiva, because the moment you consider Shiva to be the consort of Shakti, all other male deities are undermined. They achieve a secondary position. Now I would like to play one more slide for elucidating the third viewpoint. So here on the left, we see the image of Lalita Tripura Sundari. She is seated on a royal throne. Her seat is Shiva as a corpse, and beneath her there are Brahma, Vishnu and Sadashiva, and also Ganesha and other deities. They are serving as the limbs of a throne. So here Shakti is the supreme. Towards our right, we find our very own Ma Tara. Ma Tara here is breastfeeding a baby Shiva. So she is by no means Shiva's wife. She is Shiva's mother. She is an independent entity and she doesn't need any male consort. In the middle, I have posted a picture which depicts the process of creation according to the Devi Mahatmya. So first, the original supreme reality, the Mahadevi, Mahamaya, splits herself into three selves, Mahakali, Mahalakshmi and Mahasaraswati, and then they create the lesser gods and goddesses. Among the lesser gods are the three major gods, Brahma, Vishnu and Maheshwara, and the lesser goddesses are Saraswati, Lakshmi and Parvati, who are lesser manifestations of these three supreme goddesses, who are in turn the more material manifestation of the one supreme reality, which is of course female. Now I have come almost to the end of my presentation. So I have pointed out how negotiations were made and how they always fell short of achieving the aim, how consciously or unconsciously people kept undermining each other's cults, but even then coexistence was not completely forgotten, and dialogues and exchanges kept happening. And I shall show you one last slide where I shall show you some syncretic forms of the deities that we still worship. So the first picture is that of Krishna Kali. Krishna and Kali fused into one. We all know the story that Radha was worshipping Krishna, and her sisters-in-law, Jotila and Kutila, they had informed Ayan Ghosh, her husband, of her mischief. And when Ayan Ghosh came, Krishna immediately took the form of Kali, and Ayan Ghosh had no reason to rebuke Radha. So Krishna and Kali fused into one. There is also a story that is associated with the famous tantric saint Krishnananda Agama Vagisha. So it is said that once he had uh, kept a bunch of bananas for worshipping goddess Kali, but but that bunch of bananas that was taken by his brother and offered to the baby Krishna, who was worshipped by his brother. So Krishnananda was very upset, and he finished his puja without offering the bunch of bananas to the Divine Mother. But while returning to his home, he found that the light in the Krishna temple was still burning, and he peeped into the temple through the window, where he found that the goddess herself was present, and she had taken the baby Krishna in her lap and was feeding her the bunch of bananas with utmost affection. So from that day, Krishnananda had lost all her animosity towards Krishna, and he even wrote a dhyana mantra of Krishna, which was later included in his magnum opus, the Tantra Sara. Then in the second picture, I think we can identify from where it is. It is from Addapit. So we have Ramakrishna sitting here. Above him, we have Mother Adya, that is a manifestation of Kali. And then on the top of Kali, we find Radha and Krishna. So these three are fused into one entity. They are manifestations of the same supreme reality. That is the idea behind this kind of depiction. And the last picture is that of Hari Hara. The right side is Hara, that is Shiva, and the left side is Vishnu. In the upper right hand, there is Trishula. In the upper left hand, there is the Sudarshana Chakra. So these kinds of syncretism, dialogues, and compromises kept happening. And let's hope that these keep happening in the future also, and peaceful coexistence is never at stake. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pine, for that extremely engrossing, informative, and wonderfully insightful lecture. We are especially thankful for the PPT presentation because that gave us access to rare glimpses of images we couldn't otherwise have access for ourselves. And they are also part of your personal collection. So thank you very much for sharing them with us. And your presentation today has left us with so much to think about. It has taken us back to our roots, and it has motivated us to know more about a lot of things like Upanishadic philosophy, the assimilation of local deities with more powerful ones in the Vedic scheme, the evolution of monotheism out of polytheism, consequent methods of reconciliation, and the lurkings of veiled appropriation, and like you pointed out towards the end, the syncretism that we see. So I could list on and on. There's so much to talk about. I wish time were no constraint and we could go on hearing you speak to us about it and enlighten us further. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners today are waiting to speak to you. So I now declare the session open for question and answers. I already have a question. This question is from Dr. Shoikot Bondopadhyay. He is Assistant Professor of Philosophy at our college. I'll just read out his question in a minute. He writes, Sir, it is a wonderful lecture, and you have rightly demonstrated how the three sects of Hinduism are related. In your lecture, you refer to Bhaktivedanta Swami, who states that Lord Shiv is always in meditation on the lotus feet of Vasudev, Sri Krishna. Lord Shiva is worshipped because he is the greatest devotee of Lord Vishnu. My question is, Are there any specific episodes or stories within Hindu mythology that highlight the devotion of Lord Shiva towards Lord Vishnu?
Thank you so much, Dr. Banerjee, for this question. Yes, there are lots of such stories, especially in the Bhagavad Purana. The one story that immediately comes to my mind is that of Vishnu's manifestation as Mohini. It says that Shiva was enamored by the charm of Mohini and started pursuing her. And it is then said that Vishnu came back to his real form, and Shiva was not sorry, or he was not even shy, because he immediately recognized that his flaw was also dictated by Vishnu's Maya, and like a true devotee, he was not ashamed. There are also other episodes, but I think mostly it is in the Bhagavata. Then there is the story of Bhasmasura, where Shiva is saved by Vishnu from the clutches of his own mistake. So I think these are the two stories that immediately come to my mind, but otherwise I cannot remember. But I can certainly look up and get back to you later.
Thank you for the answer. I have yet another question from Dr. Abhrodip Banerjee, who is assistant professor of anthropology at our college. He writes, "Thank you for your wonderful lecture. I want to know, in Shaivism, particularly in Shaiva Siddhanta tradition of Tamil Nadu, there is a concept of Sadasid, who is distinct from Rudra and the other deities. Could you elaborate on his nature?"
Yeah, Sadashiva is a five-headed form of Shiva, and the five heads are thought to be the origin of the tantric shrotas. The shrotas are amnayas, the panchamnayas, they originated from those five faces. The five faces also have different names: Tatpurusha, Vamadeva, Sadyojata, Aghora, and Ishana. So these five faces are collectively they are called Sadashiva, and Sadashiva is the creative aspect of the Parama Shiva in Shaiva Siddhanta. In Shaiva Siddhanta, there are also concepts of the concept of Shiva Tattva, Shakti Tattva, so I'm not getting into all that. A variation of Sadashiva where the upper head or the Ishana head is invisible, and the Sadyojata head, which is at the back, that is also invisible because the Tatpurusha face is facing the spectator. That is called the Mahesha Murti, which is famously sculpted in Ellora, which is mistaken by everybody as the Trimurti. So the left Vamadeva face is the Shakti face, that is the Parvati face. The right face, the Aghora face, is the fierce face, and the face that is benign and full of divine bliss, that is the Tatpurusha face. Sadashiva was widely popular in Tamil Nadu and Karnataka right from the 6th or 7th century until the 13th or the 14th century. And one more variation of Sadashiva is Mahasadashiva, where each face is multiplied 5 times. So it has 25 faces, 5 into 5. So there are beautiful depictions of Mahasadashiva in the Meenakshi temple at Madurai. I think that suffices and that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you again for that very, very detailed response. I have a question from Professor Onupam Sen. He is a faculty of the Computer Science Department at our college. He asks, "Sir, could you please briefly explain the difference between Shakti and Maya in Shaivism and Shaktism?"
Thank you for the question. Well, I myself am an alumnus of Ramakrishna Mission, and I have been brought up on the misconception that Maya and Shakti are the same. I don't think that the Swamis of the Ramakrishna Mission were intentional in promoting this misconception, but because of the dominance of Advaita Vedanta, that is what happens with the Ramakrishna Mission monks. Well, Maya is illusion. It's mithya bhuta sanatani. So Maya is not Shakti in the sense Shakti is the divine essence of Shiva. So normally we take the analogy of a flower and its fragrance when we talk about Shiva and Shakti, but actually the analogy should be between fire and the power to burn. Yathagner dahika Shakti. So fire, what is fire but the heat, but the flames? So fire is nothing but the flames. So what is sun? The sun is just a mass of light. So when we say sun's light, we are certainly using it in a different sense, but then the light is the essence of the sun. So that's how Shakti is the essence of supreme reality, Shiva. So whether it's Shaktism, where Shakti herself is the supreme reality, or whether it's Shaivism, where Shiva is the possessor of Shakti, Shakti can never be equal to Maya, because Maya is the power of illusion and therefore secondary to the divine essence that God possesses. So my own nature and my skill as a magician, these are two different aspects. And I would also like to point out that many of the Shakta commentators of the Tantras and the Devi Mahatma were clearly uncomfortable with the appellation Mahamaya. They have explained that Mahamaya does not mean great delusion. Mahamaya means the possessor of great delusion, that is God or Goddess, God himself or Goddess herself. So Mahamaya is very much like Mahabahu. Mahabahu mane hatta noy, je Mahabahur odhikari she. So this difference is very important between Maya and Shakti when it comes to Shaivism and Shaktism. But sometimes Maya is also considered to be Shakti, though committed Shaivas and Shaktas don't want to use the word Shakti to designate Maya.
Thank you for your response. Do we have any other questions? You can unmute yourselves and ask. I guess we have no more questions as of now. And I would like to thank Dr. Pine once again for the very, very engrossing lecture. I wish you all the best for all your future academic endeavors. Heartfelt regards for consenting to uh, address us today on this very, very uh, curiously difficult and yet so very interesting a topic. I myself was very intrigued by the lecture, and there are so many points to ponder about that my head is still spinning from the entire lecture that I've heard. And I wish I could just spend more time to hear you deliberate on each point further. But we'll keep that for some other session, definitely. On that note, I request all the participants to fill in the feedback form that has been posted in the chat box. And kindly note that the next lecture in this workshop series is scheduled to be held on the 8th of June at 6 p.m. IST. The resource person for that day will be Dr. Doita Hajra Goswami, who is a noted Bengali author and a Vedic scholar. and she'll be addressing us from Germany. I would now like to present the vote of thanks. I would firstly like to thank Dr. respected members, all for participating so enthusiastically in our program. I would like to thank especially Professor Shoika Bandyopadhyay and Professor Anupam Sen for being with us all the time with their technical support and their unwavering motivation. Last but not the least, thanks and we thank him once again for sharing his thought provoking research with us. Thank you so much. Have a good evening, all of you.
Thank you, ma'am.